Hey guys, welcome back. If you've been following the series here, the Desert Island 10, the 10 albums you need on the desert island when you're trapped and marooned. Obviously, we covered seven, and we're on to the top three now. That's pretty exciting. Number three, Steely Dan, Asia. How could they not be in the top three? Asia was the band's sixth record, and it was released September 23rd, 1977. Employed over 40 musicians, guys, 42 to be exact, including band leaders Walter Becker and Donald Fagen. And listen to these notable contributions. Wayne Shorter on sax, Steve Gadd on drums, Chuck Rainey on bass, Larry Carlton on guitars. This was just the guest appearances. This was the last record fellow founding member Denny Diaz's guitar work can be heard on. And Denny Diaz, guys, I'm a huge fan of his. I think he kind of fell in the shadow of Skunk Baxter, he's Jeff Baxter's a great player too, but Denny Diaz just smoking, man. If you listen to "Do It Again," check out the midnight special, that old show. You can find it on YouTube, and dial up Denny D. "Do It Again" and watch. Denny Diaz just absolutely rip. Don't hold his silk '70s shirt against him when you do, but he's monster player on that. Interesting, on that special they had another singer other than Fagen. So they still had they were trying to go down the lead singer route, but apparently ultimately didn't work out. Anyway, back to Asia. Surprising only by today's low bar FM standards, Peg and Josie received regular airplay. Now, you could take a lot of things from that. One being, in 1977, that was a time that radio listeners demanded songs with more harmonic complexity than 2 or 3 chord changes and lyrical content above a third grader's altered love note with the E's written backwards, which is what we have today. Asia was a complex but not gratuitously complex record. Underlines really Steely Dan's entire catalog. You simply cannot employ complexity for complexity's sake and end up with a record as authentic sounding as Asia. What the band was able to do, as far as if you listen, guys, and the way they fused pop rock FM radio and with jazz composition and did it with commercial success really flies in the face of every music business axiom there is. And they were the standard bearer for that. They were really the pioneers. And I don't know that there's a close second. You could bring up Genesis, maybe you could, there's a couple other bands that you could throw into that category, but they never really got close to where Steely Dan ended up. I don't think a band like Steely Dan would ever survive today, obviously. Deacon Blues, the track on Deacon Blues and Asia, those two tracks specifically display a softer side of the album, with the former Asia, with former Deacon Blues, centered around a character who plays music in the trenches like us, in our local scenes, or, our regional scenes, living life orbiting around alcoholism, musical brilliance, and his own sexuality. You'll walk away from listening to Deacon Blues humming the melodies for days. Saxophonist Peter Christleb gets an opportunity to shine on a song that was really made for saxophone, and does just that. He shines. The tranquil Asia is just that, and Fagen explains his inspiration being a beautiful Korean woman he met. Quote, tranquility that can come of a quiet relationship with a beautiful woman, unquote. Peg and Josie are phenomenal both in composition and execution. And don't hold the frequent radio airplay against these tunes, guys. Remember, radio, again, was much different. It was a much different time and space and place in 1977. The contributing musicians display unbelievable chops on these tracks, and the result is really their bluster. Steely Dan represents what music should be, was at one time, and is no more. Two guys that you would never find in a pop culture GQ type rag, who absolutely play their asses off and thoroughly deserve to be millionaires because of it. Number 2 has to be Wish You Were Here, Pink Floyd. Wish You Were Here was recorded at Abbey Road Studios in London in 1975 and was released September 12th, 1975. It was the band's 9th record. Largely a theme and mood record. It was presented during a time when a band could still be successful, releasing an album featuring long instrumentals. Shine On You Crazy Diamond was contributed to the project to pay homage to former band member Syd Barrett, who sadly and literally fried his brain during a weekend LSD binge with his flatmates. That's a sad sidebar, guys, if you get a chance to check. And I mean, I'm no prude. Hey, party, have a good time, But this guy, literally, by all accounts, Syd Barrett went away on a weekend junket, and they just did LSD for like 4 or 5 days, and he came back and, by everyone's account, was never the same again. So it's sad. But David Gilmour and Roger Waters both relay a haunting account. Barrett, who might have been considered a bit artistically odd before his weekend LSD junket, he returned a shell of an individual he was before he left, and was institutionalized on and off, sullen, anxious, and paranoid the rest of his life. The Shine On epic parts 1 through 9 feature the brilliance of Richard Wright's piano, Minnie Moog, Hammond, Wurlitzer, organ, and Rhodes. This flawless, textured, velvety backdrop is the perfect playground for Gilmour's dark, bluesy melodies, including one of the most ominous guitar licks ever recorded. Have a Cigar is a playful rock stab by Waters at record industry greed, and features vocals by Roy Harper himself, with David Gilmour adding more guitar sizzle throughout. Welcome to the Machine takes the listener back to the dark, moody theme of Shine On, only with more edge and hopelessness. And finally, Wish You Were Here is an acoustic masterpiece of medley married to unforgettable guitar lines and featuring more abstract, dark poetry from Waters. The song could mean just about anything to anyone, and I think that's why it's so ubiquitous. But its melodies and arrangement, that's what has been drawing people in for over 40 years. Making, the lyrical content a tangential shrug of the shoulders. What makes Wish You Were Here one of the most important records ever is the groundbreaking use of classic keyboard sounds in a rock band setting, and the strength of the writing, of course. The synergy is what produced this timeless, influential album. And while other Pink Floyd records could have been considered for number 2 spot, only Wish You Were Here sports the Shine On parts 1 through 9. It's my belief that Shine On will be held in the same high regard as we hold Beethoven's Ninth Symphony 200 years from now. And lastly, guys, the record that changed my life by the band who changed my life. I remember I was a kid. I was washing dishes. I'd been playing guitar for about four or 5 years up to this point. I was a dishwasher at this local restaurant. And the guy that I worked with on this big dishwashing machine knew I played guitar, and he said, "Hey," and he was a real music enthusiast. The guy had hundreds and hundreds of albums, and his name was Dale. And he said to me one time, one Friday we were working, he said, "Hey, so what do you think of Zeppelin?" Now I'm 14 and a half, maybe 15 at the time, and I said, "Zeppelin." I said, "Oh, they did the Stairway to Heaven thing, right?" And he looked at me and was like, "Oh boy, do I have a treat for you." And the next night, we had a cassette recorder there. And the next night, he brought in all his Zeppelin tapes. And I remember listening to that Saturday night, I almost like it was yesterday, and just absolutely floored by what I was hearing. So you hear that a lot. You know, it changed my life. But those records definitely did. Number one, most important record ever recorded, Led Zeppelin II. Led Zeppelin II was released in 1969, October 22nd. The album was recorded while the band was touring, so different recording facilities were used during the process. The material was developed through rehearsals for upcoming tours and consisted of songs written by the band and adaptations of old blues tunes by Willie Dixon, Chester Burnett. You know, incidentally, they got sued constantly in the subsequent years, and those judgments were mixed. The result was a collision of hard, edgy rock and rural blues. The effort meets all the criteria for perfection. The songwriting is magnificent. The rearrangements are clever and innovative, and the musicianship is superior by all four members. And the production quality is exquisite. Is an exquisite sample of the mastery of Jimmy Page and Eddie Kramer. Kramer was on. He was the engineer on so many hundreds. Man, that guy was in the studio with hundreds and hundreds of classic albums. Hendrix, and I mean the list goes on and on. It'd take me an hour to go through them. John Bonham's drummer on the entire record is phenomenal and still floors me to this day. That he was 20, that he was only 20 years old when Zeppelin II was recorded. 20 years old, and those tracks. It's just unbelievable, man. Imagine, if you will, being 20 years old and playing drum parts that are still to this day regarded as the best recorded drumming ever. In other words, you are 20 and you've already constructed your Great Pyramid in Giza. John Paul Jones records some of the best bass lines you will ever hear. Listen to the Lemon Song. It's just ridiculous. The tandem of Jones and Bonham makes an inventory of rhythm section greatness that has never been matched 50 years later. Robert Plant's vocal prowess can be especially heard on What Is and What Should Never Be, Ramble On, the Lemon Song. Listen to the progression of Plant, the writer, as he evolves from an admittedly clumsy, awkward composer. He's talked in great length about how shitty he thought his writing was when he first joined Zeppelin. Jimmy Page's guitar playing is an absolute wave of impounded restraint and destruction. Heartbreaker has Page mauling his guitar on the event horizon, producing guitar work that is just about to lose its footing on the ledge, and sometimes does during the solo, but you don't care. While his playing has been called sloppy at times, and I concur, it is that element that gives it such an organic feel. Page has the faculties to play precisely and sniper-like, i.e. the solo in Whole Lotta Love. So sloppiness, if you prefer, is all part of his guitar playing charm, and he exhibits it frequently. But there's a musical frenzied passion along with it. Led Zeppelin 2 is truly an album that speaks for itself and is more than deserving of that special room in the pantheon of the elite. If you were walking around in 1969, try to remember where you were. While you were there, the greatest music of a lifetime was created and released. If you only know 1969 as a year in the history book, understand that modern music history starts here with this Zeppelin masterpiece. The bar has been set extremely high, and clearing it seems a laughable impossibility.